MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Ramana Annamraju. No, I'm not Albert Einstein. My guest is. So actually, today a lot of people ask me what is my background is. Including my guest. My background is actually I did a master's in physics, parts of nuclear engineering and computer science. I did everything all together. I spent a lot of time in technology side. Physics is my passion. I wrote a book. Science is not a subject. Science must be a lifestyle. I wrote a book related to medicine and physics, interdisciplinary, a book. It's available on Amazon Kindle. But I started this journey. I've been in healthcare for 30 years. I used to run imaging centers, and I did a physician placement. I did everything you can. I sold several medical devices. So I am quite a broad spectrum background in healthcare. So that using that my experience in physics and then my experience in healthcare, I started this program, and it was hugely popular now. And thank you for all of you make this is really interesting show. Let me introduce you my guest. Her name is Dr. Alana Dixson. She has an interesting background. She is quite a double. I didn't know that there is a dual program in Los Angeles. Is a MD from the Keck School of Medicine, UCLA, and then PhD program from Caltech, California Institute of Technology, where Pasadena, where my idol, one of the physics idols, a lot of them are there. She comes from that. She was doing MD. She did MD PhD program. She did a bachelor's in Yale School. She did a bachelor's. Then she went intern in Harvard. Then she studied. She did a 4 years of neurosurgery residency in University of Minnesota. I think Rochester, I guess. So let me bring her to the table. Her name is Alana Dixson. Welcome, Alana. Welcome to MedBix Webcast. I cannot hear you. Oh, I cannot hear you. This is the problem. A lot of people, I tell them in advance. So you may have to change the settings on it, play around with it. So I'm going to, it's going to, you're in a car. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Okay, come back. Yep.
I just had to change the settings there. Okay.
Okay. Can I see your face? Let us see your face.
I don't know why it turned my video around.
Yeah, please. No, I see you. Yeah, now it is good.
There we go.
Yep. There we go. So yeah, a lot of people, it is a little bit of a complicated. I prefer nowadays everybody wants to do on phones, but desktop is much better for this podcast.
Well, and I have to admit, the water today at Santa Monica Beach is very beautiful. And as you and I discussed, I'm going to be leaving California on Tuesday, actually. So I had to run and jump in the ocean before I got on.
Okay.
So I apologize. I'm not normally a car, but let me make two corrections because people will be so upset because of the rivalry. So it's Keck School of Medicine at University of Southern California, so USC, and they are big rivals with UCLA.
Okay.
So
That's
if you're in
right.
LA, you can't make that mistake. And then the University of Minnesota Medical Centers in Rochester, and I'm sorry, in Saint and Minneapolis, and so I did not finish that residency, but I did, a few years of neurosurgery residency, and I'm going back to retrain and finish up residency at some point in the next month here. So very
Let us
excited.
talk about that. So tell me your background. Yeah, Emma, you did a BA in Yale School, Yale University,
Yep.
right? And then MD, PhD program in Southern California. Sorry, UC. I don't know where it is. UC Davis, I think, right?
University of Southern California, USC. Yeah.
USC. And I'm from Atlanta. We are Georgia and Alabama. That's all we know.
And University of South Carolina, not too far. So on the
Yeah.
East Coast, people get confused with the other. So, yeah, so I went to Yale undergraduate, so Yale University, Yale College, in New Haven, Connecticut. Did a bachelor's degree in anthropology. I studied medical anthropology there, as well as many foreign languages, lots of science. And then I actually went away from college for a few years. About 7 years, actually, I took off after my undergraduate. I had only intended to take 1 year off and go to do a Fulbright. So I did a Fulbright in Russia in languages and literature. And then I came back and just had the opportunity to work for a startup company. And so I did that for a little less than a year, about a year. But I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. So that was why I had left Russia to come back. I could have stayed there and worked for ABC News. I was working in the news agency at the time. But I knew I wanted to be a doctor. So I came back. And I needed to take a few more pre med classes, kind of finish that up. And as I was preparing for that, I got this job offer to work at a startup company. And so I did that, and then eventually finished up my pre med classes at Harvard. Has a really wonderful program for people who are out of school in their extension school. So I had to take, I think, another biology class or chemistry or something like that. So I did that, took some. I had already done biochemistry, so I think I took some immunology classes and some other upper division courses, cell biology. It was a fantastic experience, and worked at the medical school there. Got a lot of exposure, and then I was going to start applying to medical school, but I ended up getting hooked up with some folks in the American Indian um, Association of American Indian Physicians, and some others. I had some great mentors, and through Nick, got an opportunity to do breast cancer and cervical cancer research in Native American communities, and also to do stuff with, at that time, the human genome was being sequenced. And I worked for a small research organization in Colorado that was doing some stuff on that. So I just had this collection of experiences that came up. And I had finished high school young, I went to college young, I finished college very young, and I just felt like, to be a good doctor, I wanted to be mature enough that I looked very young. I looked like I was like 12 when I graduated college. And I just felt like being young and looking young. And I'd had such a privileged experience to be able to be in the Ivy League at that point. Even though I came from a lot more humble background, I just felt like I had such a great, kind of rarefied experience there in the Ivy League, that I wanted to, be out in the world and do some other things and grow up a little bit, just gain some maturity.
I am quite, Albert Einstein would be jealous of you with your background. I watch a program called Human Journey, the Incredible Human Journey from Alice Roberts, Dr. Alice Roberts. She's a
Mm.
medical anthropologist and a medical doctor. She gave this. She gave a medical anthropology. Gave the first definition of how the humans moved. She gave a chronological order from Africa to the rest of the world. It is a fascinating documentary,
Yeah.
Incredible Human Journey, if anybody wants to look at it. So what is your PhD? You did a PhD in the UC University of Southern California. So what is a PhD about? What kind of things you did the thesis there in?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so it's kind of neat. I when I wanted to go back to medical school, I thought I would do an MD PhD in anthropology. Actually, I was going to get my PhD in anthropology, and in the course of my kind of time off doing research, I had been doing a lot of public health stuff and other things, and I just found that I gravitated towards the basic science components of all of these projects. You know, some of these breast cancer projects were looking at things like what genotype was associated with more severe, mortality, increased mortality or morbidity from breast cancer, more aggressive forms of cancer. And I was just way more interested in that than I was in the public health aspect of it. And so to make the transition, because I had been doing qualitative research into being able to do more laboratory stuff, I actually did a double master's in nutrition and toxicology. So I went to Columbia University and did my MS MPH. And kind of the secret is that I'm one class away from finishing those two degrees, because I ended up applying for MD PhD programs. I had some wonderful mentors who said, you're so interested in the basic sciences. I had a really strong interest in brain development and spinal cord development, and how the body is able to kind of rewire was one of the things that I was interested in. How do you gain function after an injury to your nervous system? How do you kind of rewire that or repurpose other, neuronal pathways to be able to function, so you can walk again, or, use your left side or your right side or whatever if you have a stroke. And so because of that, I had some really great mentors who said, you may be interested in doing your PhD in neuroscience instead of medical anthropology. And as much as I loved anthropology, I took a neuroscience course, actually, graduate level course. And I was like, wow, I'm hooked. I really, really love this. The nervous system is so beautiful and elegant. And it's, stereotyped across different organisms. So we've got the same pathways, different organisms, and it develops in the same way. I knew that I was interested in the embryo and how the embryo develops. And so when I went to University of Southern California, I ended up having, again, kind of just a series of opportunities came up, and I had the chance to work in the lab of Scott Fraser, who had just gotten this massive grant, a genomics grant. And they had started a pilot study with zebrafish embryos. And the whole study was identifying developmentally important genes. And because I was interested in the nervous system, spine and brain, really I wanted to do something on the brain, but the spine, some genes came up in the spine that we were able to fluorescently tag. And what was neat about it is that the pilot study was, they had created a genetic tool called a flip trap that was able to essentially tag these genes in such a way that when they were, expressed, the protein would come out fluorescent, and we could see it from essentially when the protein started to get expressed, right? So as soon as that gene turned on, we got to see a fluorescent tagging of where that gene was expressing its action at what time. There's a little bit of a delay, but it's pretty much the right time. So it was really cool. We were able to see, all these different genes in action in the developing zebrafish embryo. And it's a biological imaging lab. So we use microscopes, really high powered laser scanning microscopes, confocal laser scanning microscopes. And zebrafish embryos are clear. So we can see the spinal cord develop in real time. We just plop them down under the microscope, put them in some seaweed, base and agarose base, and they live. So they're alive, and the embryo develops. And, you get to see the spinal cord, you get to see lights turn on, and the spinal cord develops. You see cells migrating. So I was very lucky that I wanted to do my project, again, something fortuitous. I was like going to study another cell type. I'd identified some flip traps, so some proteins that were relevant in those cell types. And then I just happened to see another cell type, and it was interesting, and there was a dogma attached to its genesis and its demise. And I was able to see that dogma wasn't true. And so I studied that. So I was basically in developmental biology, in the division of biology, but it was really a neurobiology, neuroembryology project.
So embryo biology is a very new field, and also fluorescence of genes and the fluorescence of cells is also a new field. You're in the forefront of those two
Yeah, it
extremely developing fields, right?
was awesome. It was probably just an amazing experience. Probably one of the best things I've had the opportunity to do.
It is a
Except
great spectator. That you are certainly spectator of a great fields that are developing right in front of you. So what after that? Right now, in what is in the what did you find out in the embryonic biology? What did you figure it out? What did you think? What
Yeah,
happened?
well,
What
so it
happened?
turned out there's a subtype of a sensory neuron called the Rohan beard neuron, and it turns out that there was this 150-year-old dogma. Rohan beard neurons are born really early. They make the spinal cord tracts, the dorsal tracts in the spinal cord, which are associated with sensory stuff and a little bit of movement, avoiding noxious stimuli, that kind of thing. And the dogma was Rohan beard neurons are born very early. They pioneer these tracks, so they send out their axons and make the tracks. So it's like laying down railroad tracks, and then they die and they completely disappear. And it was this great mystery. What happens to the Rohan beard neurons? There was some evidence that, they died and they sort of disintegrated and all of this different stuff. And it was just accepted. So people really wouldn't even look at them past a certain stage in development. And that was usually around 24 to 48 hours is when they stopped looking at them. Even as early as 12 to 16 hours, depending on, the embryo, but that equivalent in zebrafish embryos. And so I just was this dumb graduate student who was new to all of this stuff. And I start doing my project, and I was looking at interneurons actually, but in the process, because I was looking at the spinal cord, I saw these Rohan beard neurons. They happen to have the same genes turn on in them as the interneurons. And I kept seeing them. And because the embryo is clear, I could see them. And I could see them for 1 day, 2 days, 72 hours, 96 hours. I got them out to 28 days. And the only reason that I had to stop is because eventually the embryo creates pigment cells that are scattered all throughout the dorsal side of the fish. And so to keep it alive, you just can't see. You have to bleach them. You have to do all this different stuff. And so initially, we kind of I thought, well, maybe it's because we manipulated the genes. Maybe it's because of this. Maybe it's that. And there is there are some of those cells that don't persist, that disappear, but there's a good population of them that stay. And so it's just really
So
cool.
so they morph into something else. So that's what you're saying. They morph into, or they just stay there dormant behind the scenes.
Well, they stay there. I don't know that they're dormant. So unfortunately, with my PhD, it took a long time to convince people that that's what I was seeing. And actually, it was also, it's a little bit misleading. So I did a 5-year PhD, and I'd say the first probably almost 2 years was spent just on the coursework and getting ready. And
Yes.
I think I defended so we say ascend to candidacy. So I ascended to candidacy at the end of my 2nd year. So it was really my 3rd and 4th year that I was seeing that. And then it was actually really cool. I worked with another lab, a geobiologist who is really fantastic, Joe Kirschvink. And he was interested from his undergraduate years at Caltech. He did his bachelor's at Caltech, PhD at Princeton, I think, and then went to stayed at Princeton, and then came back to Caltech eventually as a professor. He and his advisor, when he was an undergraduate, found biogenic magnetite. So magnetite is a mineral that is magnetic. And it turns out animals and organisms do make magnetite, and the little crystals are perfect when they're made by a biological organism. They're consistent every single time because they're genetically programmed to make them. And we were able to find them in zebrafish in the lateral line, which is
What is
associated.
the purpose of those magnets?
Well, we think, and there's,
The
some good
navigation, probably.
they're probably associated with navigation, kind of understanding, spatial, geospatial orientation, and helping so they're found in birds and bees and turtles and all sorts of organisms. And we think that they're there to help with kind of orienting to the magnetic fields, to the north from south and latitude, and, all of that stuff. It was,
Fascinating, Alana. What?
yeah.
Just one more, just a quick answer. Then after that, I do my presentation. After that, come back and I will ask you about your future plans and gardening and all your hobbies. Let me ask you about the neurosurgery. What do you think neurosurgery? What is the challenges? What are the opportunities and challenges that you realize in the neurosurgery side, that you think that is complex, and also same time it is a prohibitive in certain ways?
So the challenges, and then what was the other side of it?
And the challenges, and what are the advances in the neurosurgery side, and what are the challenges there that
Yeah.
you cannot do certain things with the neurosurgery?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are, of course, really amazing. We're coming up with lots of minimally invasive and stimulatory, types of things. And I say we, I'm not, in neurosurgery formally in the same way anymore. But there's so many opportunities for pain management by putting in spinal cord stimulators. That's just been, that's always been, not always, it's been there for a long time. But now we're looking at using it for chronic pain sufferers, for diabetic neuropathy, which is kind of game changing for those patients in terms of quality of life. There's all of the, stimulators for epilepsy and for, so these kind of invasive, but they're implantable devices, and they stimulate different sections of the brain or the spinal cord to achieve things. So, controlling epileptic seizures, that to, helping with Parkinson's disease. There may be some impact on depression and anxiety with some other minimally invasive or non-invasive things that neurosurgeons and neurologists and others might be able to do. So I think, to me, that's one of the exciting things, as well as potentially, obviously, the big story is restoring function in the legs of paralyzed people and
Yes.
paralyzed limbs with these spinal cord stimulators. So that was something I was actually really interested in. How can we help the body rewire things like the spinal cord to restore function when someone has an injury? I think the challenges in neurosurgery, I think there are a lot. One of them is the way that we're training neurosurgeons. It's very brutal. And so I think a lot of people who could be brilliant in the field and really innovative and really care about patients may not be interested in going because it's still a really hard lifestyle. I didn't mind it. I really loved it. But, I think it's also because it's a hard training program, you're going to get certain people that cannot do it, in the same way. And I don't know. I mean, there's some argument that that means that they're not qualified, but I think that at the end of the day, the more brilliant and passionate people that we can bring to a field, the better the field will be. So I think that's one of their biggest challenges, really.
Yeah, you are certainly. I can listen to you for hours. You're fascinating to
Uh-huh.
listen to. I'm going to present this topic, and after that, we come back and ask your entrepreneurship, all your serial entrepreneur you are. And let me present this thing. You and me are going to watch together
Okay.
this one. Okay. Just let me put this on the board, both of us. Yes.
Oh,
Okay. This is the story of if the world were 100 people, what kind of a combination would be. This is a story of a professor, a scholar, and a best-selling author who cared deeply about our planet. Her books were sold in millions and translated into 28 different languages. This is a woman nobody heard about, like Alana. We don't know Alana. We need to know about. So this is she's a professor at Dartmouth College. State of the, she gave a 1990s, she gave a report called State of the Village Report. She produced something interesting. If the world were a village of 1,000 people, in the village of 1,000 people, there are 5 soldiers, 7 teachers, 1 doctor, 3 refugees. 3 refugees, can you believe that? That's a big composition there. It is in the 1990s. She gave a report. She's a professor that inspired some people that it is a combination. If there are 100 people, what would be the combination? Some people extrapolated that one. 78 people would have been placed to shelter them. They have a place to stay, and from the wind and rain. 22 would not. They're homeless people. One would be dying of a starvation. 11 would be undernourished. 22 would be overweight. That is a fascinating statistics. If there are 100 people live on the planet, 50, this is a guess, 50 would be female, 50 would be male, 25 would be children, and there would be 75 adults, 9 out of whom would be 65 and older. 60% are Asian, 60 is Asians out of 100. 16 Africans, 14 people from the Americas, 10 is Europeans. That's a very interesting combination. And see that East is going to dominate. But only one positive thing happened. 65 people out of 100 would be cell phone users. 47 would be active internet users. 95 live in the areas with a mobile cellular network. So the world is a fascinating to watch in that sense. Connected world. Her name is Dana Meadows. She is a professor born in Chicago suburbs. She's 1941. She was born and then she died in 2001. She's a PhD in biophysics from Harvard. Very close to Alana's basically background. She was a MacArthur Fellow. She's MIT computer modeling she did. So she spent a year actually what she did was she worked in the MIT with a professor who invented the magnetic tapes. She spent the beginning years of the magnetic storage revolution. Spent a year driving through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. She spent a lot of time in India and Sri Lanka. So with her husband, she was traveling in a car in all these countries. A fascinating woman in 1960s. So it is a really fascinating to see at those times. She created one of the books she wrote is system thinking. It's a very system health. Dr. Shiva Yudarai talks about system health. She was from the same school. Dana Meadows is a system thinking. She wrote a book. It is how the systems it is all based on computers and equations. She translated those into very personal and professional life. How do you translate that complex equations and computers into the people who you and me can understand it? So what she said that system thinking is whole is bigger than some of its parts. That's a very quantum physics thinking. She did that during that book was very demonstrative of that. The second, I'm going to show you a video. Watch this video that is a fascinating video. If 100 people live in this world, what happens?
The 100 People Foundation is asking 500 schools from 100 countries to nominate 10,000 people to help us find the 100 people that best represent our world population. We've created a lesson plan that explains how a student can nominate someone they admire from their local community and fill out a community profile that helps us understand where they come from.
This is my schoolhouse. Masaya ako na interview ako, na camera ako. Masaya ako na nakilala ako nila, ma'am, natulungan nila ako. Masaya ako. Lalo na sila, masaya ako. Kasi as in, di ko sa dekalain na ganito, interview na ako, may camera ako. Kasi sa amin, wala.
We are asking the children of the world to introduce us to the people of the world.
I think this project will really open the eyes of a lot of people that we're not alone in this world. That it'll be good to see how everyone else lives in the other side of the world.
Irsiba kala dori dumduma din imirga bora kulmete mefo imdu doro din kaban bora imfai bora kulu imete mefo imfai di yanja asibuni.
Yes. So that's 100 people video. Really, Alana, you cannot watch it because the reason is that you are in the iPhone. If you are on the desktop, you would have done. You could have seen it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But anyway, that is. Let me. So can you turn around? Yeah, I see you only side of your face. Okay.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
just drinking water.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you. So healthcare as an iron triangle, quality and cost and access. These three of them are very, very three important triangle. So people say you cannot achieve all three together, but it's not true. That is some of these uh, claims are not true. Access to 1,000 right now. If you have a doctors at this present to 2023, if there are 1,000 people, Austria has a maximum number of doctors, number of 5. USA has only 3. Brazil has 2, the lowest. Norway has, if you're a psychotherapist, Norway has 3, Germany has 2, and USA has 0.06. It's a very these are the statistics if there are extrapolate to 1,000 people. Maternal mortality rate out of 100,000 people, the lowest is Greece and Finland. United States is 19. It's very high, actually. And South Sudan is 1,200. That's a 50% of the women die because of the birth, due to the birth. Shortage of 1.1 million midwives. There's a shortage of that in the world. 1 million, access to 1 million mammograms, access to 1 million in Greece, 67 of them for 1 million population. USA has a 63, less than a Greece. Very strange. MRIs, for example, Japan has a 57. United States is a small country. Japan has a 57 for 1 million population. MRIs in the United States only 34. India has 20, lower, and Mexico has only 2. If the quality measures, the effectiveness of the quality measures are effective, safe. World Health Organization measures the quality of the healthcare, effective, safe, people-centered, timely, efficient, and integrated. All these parameters they check. 8 million people die a year with a poor quality of health. 8 million people die because you get the poor quality of health. It's just our human mistake. There is a quality measures in the USA is inpatient and prevention and patient safety and pediatric care. They do measures in the United States. They do different yardstick they use. They use a different parameters they use. So cost measures in USA is support cost of for the patient and cost of resources. That all the cost is computed that way in the United States. Doctors in the world, 92 million people. Doctors in America is almost 1 million. Nurses in the world is 27 million. And nurses in America is 4 million. It's quite a bit. Yeah, that's impressive, in fact. Mental health professionals in worldwide, 400,000 people. And mental health professionals in the USA is 300,000 altogether, including psychotherapists and counselors and everybody there. So if countries with the oldest population in the world, that not surprisingly, Japan is the oldest population. Italy is the next one. Germany, China are getting older, much older population. India is not there yet, but is on the way. So these are the oldest population in the world. So they need a lot of healthcare, demand of healthcare services. There is a huge demand for healthcare services. Countries with the youngest population, you'll be surprised. Africa, continent of Africa, as the lowest, the youngest population is going to be in the future. We're all going to be older. Only Africa, people with the younger populations in Africa. Nigeria is the number one. Mali, Uganda, Somalia, they're all going to be younger population in the Africa. I think we need to be nice to Africa now. They need to serve us when we get older. So that is the countries. Then Dana Meadows died in 2001. She's an inspiring woman. She wrote a book about these things. Sustainability Institute. She started it. She's a very caring woman, inspiring leader, scholar, writer, and teacher. She's Dana Meadows project is very popular. Dana, you can go to her website, donalameadows.org. It is a very popular. She's really one of the pioneering women. She cared about planet. Yesterday I was listening to this one, Deepak Chopra's talk with Piers Morgan. He said that we are humans sleepwalking to the extinction. That's what he said. That's exactly what we are doing. We have to be extremely careful about what we are doing. So let me bring Alana back and ask her a couple of questions, and then maybe she can shed let me ask her, what do you think of the presentation, Alana?
I think it was wonderful. I wish I was able to see the video, but I think Dana Meadows sounds like a wonderful person. I've seen the village before, actually. Now that I'm remembering it, yeah,
Yes,
and I
yeah, it's a very good. The one of the things is what we are doing to the humanity is right now it is unbelievable, cruel racism, discriminations. They have a rich and poor, and all these humans were bounded by this planet. We have this unbelievable cruelty among each other. That's what
mhm.
is doing. We are sleepwalking to extinction. That's what Deepak Chopra said. That's a very interesting
Yep.
thing he mentioned. But Alana, what are you thinking in the present world to survive? What is your passions, and what do you do entrepreneurship wise? What do you do now? What kind of things you love to do?
Yeah, well, so I'm just gonna try to put my phone on a holder here. May not work. Never mind. I think I can't do it. What do I like to do? What are my passions? So I have a child. I have a young son. He's 14 years old. So um, I spend time with my family. That's one of the things.
Can you
But
not move? Just can you be steady a little bit? Okay, thank you.
yeah, yeah,
Good.
sorry, I'm just trying to put something away. Yeah, so I spend time with my young son and my husband. I go to church, so those are some kind of personal family activities. And then because I'm in Los Angeles, in near the beach a lot, I live part of the year in one state and part of the year in LA. I actually try to go and be outside and do things in nature as much as possible. I garden, so I've been an avid gardener my whole
Tell
life.
me
I don't.
about gardening. This? When I was growing up in India, the gardening is a very fun thing to do, and it is a in a school high school activity also. We are losing. We need to really bring that back. It's a lot of therapeutic, and also it is a sustainability process. What do you think of it?
I think gardening is healing. I think it's empowering. I think it, helps us to maintain our health in different ways, for young people, but especially I think for older people. Gardening is a physical activity that gets you out in the sunshine, vitamin D. Even if it's cold and windy and rainy, you're still being exposed to the elements. That's healthy for you to be out. You're crouching down, you're standing up, you're lifting things. So it's all of this, minimal physical activity, but it's constant. So you're moving and you're taking steps, you're making progress towards, something that's different than just sitting on your couch or sitting in front of your computer all day. So I think in that way it's very healing and helpful to your physical body to be healthful. But there's something about being around plants, seeing greenery and then growing your own food. You have control over what goes into your body because you've put that love and attention into the food, and you can grow things. So for me, I have allergies to a lot of things, and I also have preferences. So I like a lot of Japanese vegetables, and they're not difficult to come by here in the section of LA that I live in because we have, I think, 3 or 4 Japanese grocery stores around us. But normally I don't live near a Japanese grocery store all the time, and so normally it's hard for me to find some of the vegetables that I like shishito peppers or shiso leaves, or Japanese eggplants, can be difficult to come by. And I like those things. I eat those things every day. And so I grow some of them in my garden. And then the other component of this is I try to eat organic because I'm allergic to pesticides. And so I can avoid all pesticides in the fruits and vegetables that I grow in my garden. And I love that. So I know that I'm getting stuff, and I know that I'm feeding my child, and my husband can eat what he wants as well. And so I know we're getting good, wholesome vegetables in.
You have a kind of exotic background here, kind of a Japanese and the Native Americans, in African Americans, all mixed. You have,
Yep.
like my children, some
Yeah.
extent. So that gives you the exposure to broad spectrum of food habits. You said that mentioned Creole sushi. Is it like a spicy sushi, or what is that Creole sushi?
Creole Sushi is actually a real estate development and leasing company that my sister and I started in New Orleans. And we named it that to reflect the fact that our mother's Japanese and our father is Creole. So it's Creole Sushi.
Very nice. That's a
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah,
You know
Louisiana
that
Creole.
actually is good for you too. That okay, the spicy sushi would be excellent idea.
It is. I like spicy sushi.
That's right. So one of the things is that the if you advise the next generation of medical residents, what kind of advice you give? You went through a lot of steps, good and bad and ugly, and all those things. You've seen the broad spectrum of all
Mhm.
things in the world. What would you suggest to particularly uh, residents in general, and then particularly minority residents?
Um, I think the biggest things, that's a few big things that I would suggest are number one, you know, getting into medical school, finishing, getting into residency and finishing. On the one hand, it's very formulaic. Don't be intimidated by the process. It's just a process. It doesn't speak to your intelligence, your capacity for, being good at something or bad at something. It really is just a protocol. It's like following a lab protocol. You just do it.
I wanted to holler at my son about that.
Yeah.
Ramesh, listen to her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just get out of your head about it, but also recognize that there is a level of toxicity in discussing and participating in that process, that protocol, for especially minority students, especially brown, dark brown skin or brown skin students, especially for those who come from families where college was not something that the parents did or the grandparents did, where it's maybe not as well funded. Maybe their family is poor or middle class and they have difficulty paying for school and for test taking and all that stuff. Understand that it's not your fault, that it can be a toxic process, and it's just a process. So the process itself isn't toxic, but the way that people treat us during the process can be that way. And so that's one big thing, is just recognize it's just a process. There's nothing mysterious about it. Learn the protocol and do it. So if the protocol is you get a bachelor's degree, don't try to talk yourself out of getting a bachelor's degree and say you can be a doctor without a bachelor's degree. If the protocol, which it is to take a biology class, take a biology class. Don't try to be cute with it and take some alternative, nursing biology. Take the biology class for pre-med students, and dedicate yourself. Make sure that you're studying and doing all that. But also, I think the other big thing is a lot of minority students get discouraged, and they're often given false information about the process or about their ability to complete the process, because maybe their parents aren't doctors, or they just don't seem to have the study habits that other people have, because they're not getting the grades. That may not actually, a lot of the things that people may tell you may not actually be true. Maybe you're struggling. I went to Yale undergrad, and it was funny, when I was there, they had not created these different tiers of introductory chemistry, general chemistry. The first, class you do usually take was either biology or chemistry. And it turned out that in my chemistry classes, there were people who had already had biochemistry, organic chemistry, physical chemistry. They'd done AP chemistry, they'd taken college level chemistry. And I had only had one high school level chemistry class. I could not compete with those other students.
Alana, one thing I noticed it during my son's the school in Vanderbilt, they use the chemistry as a weapon
Yeah.
to screen it out all the medical
Yeah.
students. So you need to master the chemistry first. I think that's a
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying can be toxic, right? Because
it's very toxic.
at the end of the day, that's a game. That doesn't tell you whether or not someone will be a good doctor. In fact, what it mostly tells you, and I think what I appreciated about Yale is that they started to see this, what it mostly tells you is prior exposure. And that really, what that prior exposure is it's a measure of family socioeconomic status, right?
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
of the strength of that student's high school preparation, which probably is a proxy for the wealth of that community that they grew up in. You grow up in a wealthy suburb or you have a wealthy family and they send you to private school. Guess what? You're going to have had chemistry on the college level before, and you can take an intro level chemistry class in college and ace it. If you come, like I came from an inner city background. So I grew up in an inner city. My dad was a lawyer, but he chose to work for poor people. So we didn't have a lot of money. I went to a performing arts high school. So if you had asked me to dance or to play an instrument, do music or write, I was a very good writer, very good analytical thinking. But did I have AP chemistry? No, I didn't. And I could have taken it at the community college, but because of the socioeconomic status of my
Yeah.
school,
That
no one was doing that. No one told me to do that. I didn't even think that that would be something necessary for me to do.
that is a very toxic approach they're doing.
Yeah.
Very chemistry as a weapon to filter the people. It's a
And
horrible thing.
remember, most of these kids, they're children. They're 16 to 19 years old.
Correct.
They don't know how to manage stress yet. They can't even manage washing their feet and their socks at college without their mother.
I went through. I mean, my son,
Yeah.
I when he was studying, my son is a 6 foot tall and a football player. And when he was doing his finishing his degree, I went to see him in the final year. He was literally in tears. The guy, they melted him down to the tears. That kind of a strength that what they put the torture together. Let us talk about something else, Alana, about the health equity part of it. What do you think of health equity in this country? It is a delivery of healthcare is very I know I married a woman from a very rural South Carolina, and the healthcare delivery system is terrible there. It is just a below any even comparable to the even third world countries. Is that why in this country such a disparities of these healthcare inequities exist, and how do you why you think, and what is the solutions for you think, the specific solutions, if we can provide one or two?
Yeah, I think that it unfortunately, I mean, people don't want to talk about this. I think now we have more awareness, but I think it has to do with white supremacy and sexism. I think the reality is that for a long time, this country was built by the design and for just certain groups of people. And those groups of people may contain individuals who are wonderful people and believe in health equity, but that doesn't change the structure and the history of what this country was founded on. And so, because of that history and that structure, we now have a problem with healthcare, and we have a problem with a lot of institutions in our country that they are not designed to meet the needs of everyone. And the other big thing is, because of the class issues, a lot of the United States and the institutions in the United States were created or are used, even if they were created for poor people or for people of color, they ended up being used by people who had more money, by and large, white populations that were in different locations than the communities of color that maybe it was supposed to serve. Like you look at the WIC program or welfare or different things like that. They maybe were designed originally for one group, and then they've been used by another group, and then nothing replaces what was supposed to be for people who were already facing inequities. So I think when you found a country on dispossession of land and genocide that happened with Native people, enslaving African people, and then barring Asian immigrants, my family, Japanese people were treated very, very badly when this country, when Japanese first started coming here, and then certainly during World War II at the internment camps. When you have those types of things that happen in a country, to me, what it says is you don't value people. You only value certain segments and you only call certain groups people, right? So I think in this country for a long time, we've said white males who are wealthy are the only actual people. Everyone else is sort of an appendage. You
They
can't.
use a stigma. Sorry to interrupt you. They use a stigma as a characteristic to discriminate problem too, right? The stigma is attached to you're in welfare, for example, you're
Yes,
in food stamps. They use a stigma to that, irrespective of they're intelligent or smart, or is that
exactly.
they could be. So
Yeah, I faced that when I gave birth to my
that,
son. I was treated, the comments that were made was, and I'm not Latina, right? So I'm not Hispanic at all. but the comments were made that I was a Mexican woman who was poor and that I had probably had multiple babies in the past. And in reality, I had some difficulties with giving birth to my son. I had an emergency C-section. I hemorrhaged for a long time, and I was actually in heart failure. And I ended up gaining about 30 pounds, 20 of them in the last trimester, which is unheard of. And then I was gaining 5 pounds a week. And then I also gained about almost 15 pounds in the hospital because of heart failure. And that was a missed opportunity to treat my heart failure because I have a family history of heart disease. So it turns out we gain some weight, our heart starts to fail. So that happened with me during pregnancy. But because the stigma was there, because of my skin color, because of my facial features, the nurses didn't look at my name, didn't look at my history, didn't speak to me. They spoke over me, and the doctor spoke over me and just assumed I was this poor Mexican woman who'd had a bunch of babies and I was just overweight, and ignored all of the other symptoms that were happening. That happens a lot.
Now that they're extending the stigmas to the poor whites also, a lot of they're discriminated. It is just a brutal way that controlling the corporations.
And that's why I say, I think there's the class component, there's the gender component, and there's the race component. And I think the truth is that even though I think many doctors are wonderful people, many healthcare administrations are, composed of wonderful people, but when you design a system that's only for one group of people, that system's going to have bias built within it.
Not only bias, it is deemed to fail eventually.
Exactly.
That is going to end up in an extinction. Probably it's a suicidal extinction. We're asking for a suicidal of humanity.
And yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and a privilege to talk with you, Alana. You're truly, and I wish you all the best. Anything you do, we'll be in touch. And thank you so much. And you can exit the program and watch the video, another second video, Bill Gates video. I'm going to show you. You can watch that if you exit out, and you can watch that.
I want to make one other comment too. We didn't talk as much about entrepreneurial stuff, and that's fine. But I wanted to make a plug for that people like to talk about work-life balance, but I think you have to do things that spark joy and that bring you health every day, no matter how busy you are, no matter what your obligations are, you have to do it. And so today, and I want to apologize again to you and anyone who might view this, that I'm a little less formal than I would have been because I took the opportunity to go and jump in the ocean. But, I've spent a lot of time not doing those things. When you become a doctor, and especially when you're a surgeon, you defer a lot of things. And one of the things that I've realized is, I gained a lot of weight from stress. So I'm losing that weight now. My hair went gray recently, prematurely. And I think, what's so important is you need to spend time on those things that bring you something in your life that you can hold on to and that spark joy. And that might just be 1 minute out of the day. So I saw that the ocean looked beautiful. The weather was nice. I had the clothes in my car and I said, you know what? I've got an hour and a half. Let me go jump in the water. Because if I don't, I'm moving soon to the East Coast. I'm not going to have this beautiful beach that I can, look at and jump in the water. It's only 4 miles from my house. And I feel so much better. And, it was good. I got to spend some time with my son. And I just think that's important. Especially
Thank you, Alana. Thank you for joining with me. Take your time and your beach time, and then I took away from you. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and privilege. Bye.
You.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.